We're really, really excited to have our closing night film with such a wonderful woman and a local legend. And it's just been so amazing seeing all the support for her this last week and month. And I know how hard she worked on this film. And when Wendy and I saw this film, it kind of came last minute to us, and it was a no-brainer to make it our closing night film and to celebrate it. It's such a relevant topic to California and honestly the world. And it's just an absolutely beautiful film. I hope some of you have gotten to watch it today. If you haven't watched it yet, you can until midnight on Wednesday. And thank you so much to Brittany for extending that time for people to watch it. So we are going to move into the panel discussion. So without further ado, I want to introduce Brittany App, the filmmaker of Where There Once Was Water.
Oh, hi.
Hey. And we also have Pepper Daniels from the Crush 92.5, who's going to be hosting the panel today. We have Candy Mossett White, who's the Native Energy and Climate Campaign Coordinator for the Indigenous Environmental Network. We have Kate Lundquist, co-director of the Water Institute and Bring Back the Beaver campaign. We have, and the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. We have Jason Haas, partner and general manager of Tablas Creek Vineyard. And we also had a last minute guest, which I'm really excited about, is Chief Colleen Sisk, who's also here today. So I'm going to let you take the lead, Pepper, and dive into this incredible film of Brittany's.
I will do that. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you to Sky and everyone with the Film Fest. I think it's been said in this last hour how amazing it is to pull this off in these strange times that we're living in. And I think you guys have done an amazing job. I'd also like to thank you, Sky, for introducing my entire panel, which saves me, a tremendous amount of work. As the host, that's the hardest thing to do, is to go around and get everybody's name right. So I was going to cop out and make everyone introduce themselves, which I think I still may do a little bit of that as we go along. But first, let's talk about this, a little bit of the formatics of this film coming to life. And I want to let Brittany speak to that. I want to also point out that I'm very proud to be a part of this project, proud to be a great friend of Brittany App. When I was watching the movie the other night, I was sitting there thinking, how many of your friends that you've known for a long time really accomplished something at this level? I mean, this is really an unbelievable accomplishment. I couldn't be more proud of Brittany for that and all that's went into it. And I know all the work that's went into it because I've been lucky enough to be part of it since the beginning, doing fundraisers, emceeing events, helping with the fundraising campaigns. And I've seen how this has gone from a spark to what it is now. So let's start with that, Brittany. Talk about this process just real quick for the other filmmakers that are out there. I remember emceeing a Bike Across America event. We're going to ride your bike all the way from San Diego to the East Coast to raise money for water. And that was the first big step in this journey, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so the super Cliff Notes version of the journey is, I traveled internationally way back in 2008 and again in 2011. But in 2008, it was the first time I ever saw what life looked like for people without access to clean water. And it just broke me into pieces. And so when I got back from those travels, I thought, okay, well, how can I make a difference in this regard? And that is how I landed on, well, if I do something that's nuts, I could probably raise money. I could donate it to a group that's working in water access. So I chose to ride a bicycle across the United States of America with my own 2 legs. And we raised, and my dear friend Gar, who's also the editor on this film we're discussing tonight, joined me because he's also a crazy person. We raised $15,000 for water aid doing that. And then I guess this film, we could consider the second chapter of my accidental water activism. I mean, this this is why I feel like I'm on this planet, is to try to tell stories, to share stories, to, you know, be a voice for the water in whatever way that I can. And this film came to life amidst the drought in 2014 when I looked across the street and saw my neighbor power washing his boat in his driveway. And it just like steam out my ears. And I thought, okay, well, I need to do something again. I don't know if it'll be as crazy as riding a bicycle across the country, but that's when this project started. It started as a photo essay. A couple years into that, it just got too big. And I realized that really I wanted to talk to people and start having these conversations and trying to connect all the dots. That is the water story here in using California as an example, but really talking about this issue worldwide. So here we are. Here we are
all these years later. And if anyone wants to chime in the chat room here, if there's something that we're missing that maybe we can add to the conversation, I'll be glad to include anyone. But I'll tell you, we're going to kind of hit some of the pillars of the themes of the movie as we go around our panel here. Before we let Brittany get out on that, I also want to talk about, for the filmmakers that are out there, the feedback process that you went through is a little unconventional. I think for some filmmakers, they might find it awful brave, the way that you would put pieces of this film out there and take direct, raw feedback on that. And I want to just real quickly highlight one of those moments at the Grange Hall here in San Luis Obispo. For people who are not local, this is a very small sort of Masons gathering space. In San Luis Obispo, we're not known for having air conditioning, but we are known in these times to have 112 to 115 degree days every once in a while. So when Brittany decided to show her film to a small audience to get feedback, we went to the Grange Hall, and it happened to be one of those days where it was 115 degrees.
It was so hot.
And people were dedicated to sitting in that room for 90 minutes and sweating through it to help you out with this film. Talk about that feedback process that you went through, because it was pretty brave of you and it was very direct.
Well, thank you. This is my first film ever. And at least two of the ladies that are here tonight are here because I just kept, it wasn't there yet. And I knew it wasn't there yet. And so I would feel like I was somewhere with the film, and I would say, okay, I need feedback on this very rough cut. And I want to know what's working and what's not working, and what is missing, and what is lighting people up, and what is confusing people. And here's my baby, tear it to pieces. And we did that probably 4 times. And each time, of course, I cry and I sit with all the negative feedback, but also all that negative feedback is positive, because in the end, the story is what it is because so many people were willing to give me their honest feedback on, like, hey, I see what you're trying to do, but you can't include all of the things. You can't make a 9-hour movie. You can't, you can't run here and there and everywhere and expect us to be able to follow the story. And so I'm really grateful to everyone who participated in this feedback process. And like I said, there were probably 4 rounds of it where I would literally rewrite the entire script every time. And in one of those rounds, my dear darling Pepper Daniels was in the film, and then rip got on the floor, poor guy. And you're still my friend. Oh, you're so nice.
I'm so honored. I've never been so honored to be cut out of something before in my life.
Oh my goodness.
I some of the feedback too was it was hot in that room, right? That didn't help the movie at all. But
hot in the room. That was some of the feedback I got. More fans, please. Too hot in here. I'm like, well, climate change. Let's talk about it.
Awesome. Well, let's get into this first theme, and I want to start with Candy White. Candy, I'll give you a chance to reintroduce yourself to everyone, and I want you to speak to the theme that is very prominent in this film, that the sacredness of water, and the idea that each of us should have a personal relationship with water.
Thank you, everybody. I want to introduce myself in my language. So I'll say Dosha Maraguets Marashima Ishuia Hets. And I said, hello, relatives. My name is Eagle Woman. My English name is Candy, and I work with the Indigenous Environmental Network. I am Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara. I don't know if anyone's heard of our nations, but we are now in North Dakota, which is where I was born and raised. And the theme of water is life is more than, just a theme. It's kind of just the overarching reality of our life in general. As women, we are the first life. We carry our babies in water. We wouldn't be here without it. And so a lot of the work that I do and have done has resulted from my own experience in the environmental justice movement of having cancer and being a cancer survivor and making connections of contamination of water sources to health and our environment. And so I was actually at a conference, and that's when Brittany and I were able to connect and reach out to each other and talk to each other. And some of the stuff that got cut was when I got really emotional about it. And that's probably a good thing because I didn't want to be crying too much. Although when I saw myself in the beginning of the film, it was like my eyes are all red and puffy, and you didn't know that I had just been bawling my eyes out right before that happened, because I was talking about the destruction in my community around the oil that's happening and seeing the water become contaminated every single day. And if we can't drink the water, we can't survive. So that's one of the reasons why I was so happy that Brittany decided to really incorporate that and talk about that when it comes to the importance of water and water being life. Mini Wichoni, as we said at Standing Rock 4 years ago, water is life.
And one of the things she mentioned a while ago about her inspiration was when she traveled overseas and she saw some issues around the world. I think that one thing that we're blind to here in America is that, of course, that's bad over there. It's not bad here. This is America. It's not bad here. Speak to the level of this issue in America. For example, people with water at home and the lack of access to water in their homes in the United States of America.
I'm not sure. Does that question go to me? I mean, because I'll definitely talk about
Yeah,
one of the people that was featured, Brittany, you went to the Navajo Nation and you want to talk about not having access to water. All of my friends, they have power lines going right over their heads, and, they see coal-fired power plants with no running water and no electricity in their homes. And my dad actually still hauls his water here in North Dakota on the reservation. It's called Fort Berthold Reservation. And I don't think people really understand that is also here, right here in the United States and across a lot of the reservations. There's 568, there's more than that, 600 something federally recognized tribes, and we're dealing with the struggle of having access to clean water. And for me, even in my community, we didn't get rural water systems put into place until 2009. And before that, it was just either bathe in contaminated water or, they're still bathing in dirty water, but at least now you can turn on the faucet and drink the water that comes out of the faucet. And my grandma, we used to just turn the water on at home, and she'd say, just let it settle for a while. And you'd see the stuff settling at the bottom, and then you would drink the water. Otherwise, we drove down to the well, pumped the water with these big, they were like, I think for gas, for hauling gas, but we used them for water jugs, and we would haul back and forth. And water is heavy. You don't know how much or how precious it is until you really have to haul your own. So every single time I'm flushing the toilet, it's with in great intention, because that's a lot of water, and it's fresh, clean, pristine drinking water that we use here in the United States for our toilets. And so it's a mess.
Brittany, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, thank you, Candy. And I'll probably cry. We're on the theme of water, so if it comes out of my face, we'll just go with it. Yeah, it has been heartbreaking to learn as I worked on this project how prevalent of an issue water access is here in the States, and especially for Indigenous people. And after this film was done, I worked on a project with Dig Deep and the US Water Alliance to look at that specific issue. We traveled around to 6 water hotspots in the US, one of which was Navajo Nation, where people are living still today without access to clean running water. And the study found that if you are living in a Black or Brown community, you are twice as likely as a white person to live without access to clean running water. And if you are living in an Indigenous community, you are 19 times as likely. And we should be ashamed of that. I mean, we can fly to Mars and we can't provide water to the people who have always been here, which is why it's so important to me, and such an awesome thing that Candy and Chief Sisk are here tonight. So I'll hand it back because I'm a mess.
Yeah, that's the number you gave me when we talked about this, Brittany. 2.2 million in the United States. 2.2 million in the United States live in a home without access to running water, which is it's a ridiculous number. Let's talk about the water and where does the water go and why don't we have more water, and how water works across the lands that we live in. I want to bring in Kate Lundquist and give you a chance, Kate, to also reintroduce yourself. And the main theme I wanted to talk to you about was 2 parts. One, the watershed, because I don't think people in America understand the concept of the watershed and what that is. And then also, we're going to talk about a couple keystone species that are part of this conversation. The first one being the beaver. So Kate, let's talk about the watershed and the beaver.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here with you all. It's an honor, and thank you, Brittany, for your beautiful work and pulling all of the threads together into this tapestry. So I work with the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. I co-direct our Water Institute with my colleague Brock Dolman, and we do a lot of outreach and education to the world, and in particular our region, to support folks in understanding what watersheds are and how to restore them. And watersheds are just basins of relations, as my colleague Brock likes to call them. They are these places that collect the water that falls and draws them all into one place, whether it's to the ocean or to a lake or to a wetland. And so we all live in watersheds, and I'm right here in the lower Russian watershed, the Russian River watershed, and I'm so grateful right now it's raining. California is, as Brittany's film really beautifully depicts, we're the most hydrologically modified state in the Union. When the settlers came, they saw all of these wetlands that were managed by the native people here, all of the amazing folks that were tending these landscapes across California and the entire continent. And the beaver were there too. And so the beavers were the ones who really got in there and managed all of those wetlands and really helped create these super amazing collection points that were full of water and full of rich soil. And so draining those was really key for the settlers who wanted to come and colonize and turn the land into farmland. This is what they did all across the European continent, and that's what they did when they got to California. And displacing all of the native Californians, they also displaced the beaver and basically tried to annihilate both. And thankfully, I'm so grateful that they were not successful in either endeavor. And now we have an opportunity to look at where we're at. You know, we're a state that really, really depends on water coming from high up in the mountains, snowpack that is ever diminishing, and from all of our big river systems up to the north. And so we need to treat that water really preciously and learn how to use it very sparingly. And so there's all these great strategies out there, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to get to share those and to also partner with other organisms that are doing a really amazing job. And that's where the Beaver comes in, because they are out there on the landscape, and what they're doing is they're helping keep that water on the landscape. They're recreating the wetlands that we took away from them, and they're keeping that water higher up in the landscape. And so they're kind of our insurance that now that we're losing snowpack due to warming temperatures, that we will be able to keep our water on the landscape longer, higher up in our watersheds. And we don't need to put in more big dams. Big dams aren't the solution. Lots of little dams that are ephemeral and that pulse and change as we get these different flows that help disperse that water back onto our floodplains and really just reinvest that water, slow it, spread it, sink it, store it, and then share it back to all of those that need it. So that's the role that Beaver have always played and will continue to play as long as we learn how to live with them. And that's a big piece. You all in San Luis Obispo, shout out to the SLO Beaver Brigade.
Yeah.
You need to like connect with those folks. I know Audrey, you are on this call. If you are inspired at all about Beaver, you should go check them out and see what waterworks they do. You know, Beaver's taught us how to manage water and how to put it onto the landscape in a good way, and provide amazing habitat for our salmon and a bunch of other endangered species in California. So
yeah, they've just put a slowbeaverbrigade.com, by the way. Beaverbrigade.com just came across the chat. And in the film, and we're going to kind of follow the narrative of the film here, because the first parts of this conversation is how dire the situation is. But we're going to end on a hopeful note, just like the film does, as we work through these issues. But I also mentioned the beaver as a keystone species, which to the layperson, I don't know what that means. But that's an important distinction for the beaver, that it is a keystone. And is there any more about that you'd like to add?
Sure.
What designation means?
Yeah, it's an architectural term. If you're building an arch, that last stone that goes in is considered the keystone, and it holds it all together so that it doesn't fall. And it's used to describe species in our ecosystem that play a really pivotal role, where in trying to take care of themselves, they disproportionately benefit a bunch of other species around them. And so this is true of beaver. Beaver, they modify the habitat in so many different ways, creating all of this diversity in the habitat, and it really attracts all of these other species. Water is life, and if you're someone who knows how to manage water so well that you can hold it and create these ponds and wetlands, and beavers farm their food, they're moving that water around so they can eat more willow and they can eat more cattails and grasses and all kinds of things. And so in doing that, now it brings in the birds, it brings in the frogs, it brings in all the different species who need water. And there are so many examples, you know, whether it's our endangered coho salmon or chinook or steelhead, all of them have co-evolved with beaver and really, really benefit from the habitat they provide, and our frog species and so many different birds, and the list just goes on and on and on. And so it's really one of the things that's hard for people to wrap their minds around is like, oh, right, beaver themselves aren't necessarily endangered and in trouble, but they are providing so much critical habitat for so many beings that are in trouble, including humans. And so we need to honor the role they play, and we need to protect them and stop killing them because we're upset that they're chewing down our almond tree or whatever it is. And so we have all kinds of solutions, and I really recommend people, you know, check out. I know Brittany put a link for our website, but oac.org/beaver, and you can learn more about it. But yeah, keystones are really where it's at. And, you know, for us, we got really interested in beaver because we were trying to save our coho salmon because they are so just in decline. And beaver, they are one of those real great friends of coho. And so if you are in a place where you're trying to create more wetland habitat to save your species and your communities, think about checking out your beaver and making sure that they're helping you out there.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that transition too, because we're excited to now piggyback on our next keystone species, which you just mentioned was salmon. And we're excited that Chief Kathleen Sisk is with us. Chief, give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, and then let's talk about salmon and let's talk about damming in Northern California. What's going on up there? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. And I'm sorry, Brittany, it was such a short notice.
You're allowed to join whenever you want, Chief. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy. It's great.
You know, we just have so many things going on in trying to save, well, not even trying to save it. We're trying to make people understand what they should be doing, you know, how they should be thinking about something. And it's so difficult to find a way to articulate that. And so when films come out like this, you know, that maybe we can reach another audience, maybe we can reach a little farther into the generations. Maybe that will help, you know, because I'm the chief of my people, the Winnemem Wintu people. And we have a history here in this area of California and the Mount Shasta rivers that come off of that mountain. And our creation story comes from there. And so we have an internal ticking clock that makes us rise up to try to change things back to that balanced native way of life and the native way of the mountains interacting with the animals and the fish. And so we've gone through, just like every tribe has, the hardship, not only just hardships, but, you know, the genocide of trying to wipe us out the way that they tried to wipe the beaver out and tried to wipe out almost everything that was in the way of what became now, you know, big ag GMO farming. So we have that connection to the water, you know, and it's hard to explain that. Like you look at behind Candy and you see all that blue water. A lot of people don't really know what water looks like or even tastes like. By the time that they get it coming out of their tap, it's already ran through the gamut of contaminants and pollution and fertilizers, and then it gets spinned into some other thing, and then it's pumped out to your tap and sold to you as good water. And in reality, you know, people here in California are basically fighting over contaminated water because the people are the judges of what our environment should be like, instead of the salmon being the judges who tell us how our water is, because they come from the ocean and they come up the rivers to the source. They know that the rivers have a source, and seems like people don't. People don't understand that the rivers don't just like suddenly appear. Like there's a big thing from the sky that comes down and creates this giant river. There's a source where it's trickling. It's a trickling effect. And maybe several springs and several creeks are coming together to create this magnificent water system that goes down and makes a road for the salmon to come back. And when the salmon come back, they dig into the riverbed, cleaning it and helping it breathe and helping the water go down into the groundwater systems. I mean, there's a whole episode. It's not just the snowpack. It's like these mountains are water banks, and there's the oldest water that you can think of under these lava volcanoes. And that's what's pushing the water up. It's not just the rain and the runoff and the melting of the snow that creates this river system, you know. And the cleaners, like they were talking about the beavers, it's like in my language, we call the beavers bisoskok. Bisoskok is the center of life. Wherever there's the bisos, there's life, because they create these magnificent water pools that are clean and good, because they break every year. and they break in a different spot. And so the high mountain creek runs in a different spot. But nowadays, those creeks run in like ditches because they run in that same path all the time. And so it wears away the bottom of the stream. And as it does that, the red band trout can't spawn because that water is exiting too fast. It's like a gun barrel. That water just shifts out and it doesn't seek in. And our high mountain meadows are not being created like they should. And so we have a lot of people who have bits and pieces of what an environment should look like. And it seems like people are unwilling to like take on the whole thing. It's like, oh, it's wolves, it's beavers, it's trout, it's salmon, it's the deer, you know, all of these things that provide the waterway with a way to run. And then you have the mountains, you know, and instead it's like a playground for people is becoming the emphasis of everything. You know, even now that we're in drought, we're still talking about, oh, we need some off-road vehicle roads. It's like, do you know what off-vehicle roads do to the hydrology system of the mountains? We don't need more of those. We need more people to understand that this is the source. And those salmon swim in the ocean and they bring those nutrients up. And they only do this one time in their life. They come up, they spawn, and eventually they go back out to the ocean. Something tells them that because they don't have any role models to say, come on, it's time to go to the ocean. And they get to the ocean and they have to change into saltwater fish. They don't say, you know, I made a mistake. I better swim back up there to that river and wait and see what's going on because I'm not a saltwater fish. But instead they change, they stay there, and somehow they know they're going to change. And they change and they swim out into the ocean and they're out there. That used to be 4 to 7 years. Now it's 3 to 4 years. Wow. And then they swim back in and they have to change back to freshwater fish. And, you know, the ability to make changes. I mean, we should understand that. We should grab onto that ability to make changes for the good. And we don't, we make changes for comfort. You know, and like Candy was saying, is like many of our people still carry water. You know, the Yuroks and the Kruks have no water systems of running, but have the ability to have water. We carried water, you know, when I was a kid, and now the places that we used to get the water, they say it's not potable anymore. It's not good water anymore. It's like, well, what happened? You know, and so when this film came about, I was thinking, it's like, if people could really read that title and kind of get it, you know, that this has happened all around the world and especially in the States, that you can't go hiking and not carry your water in, right? Who goes up there and says, I don't need no water. I'll drink when I get to the springs. You know, there'll be water there. But anymore, you know, the springs that I used to go to, I told my kids, we're going to go up and see where we used to fish. We went up there and it has a big sign, says water diversion project. It's like, no more water there, no more fish. And they changed that whole hydrology of that mountain and the ecosystem. It's like, we have no regard for where birds fly away. We have migrating fish. We have, you know, all kinds of things that keep our Mother Earth in balance. And there's no regard for that. It's like people are the judges. They're the judges of the salmon now because, you know, we got to put in a gravel spawning ground and call it a gravel spawning ground. But you know what? Unless the salmon use it, it's not a gravel spawning ground. It's a bunch of rocks that you throw it in the river, and the river now has to move those rocks around so that the salmon could use it if possible, you know. But we don't really understand. We can't be the judges. We need to be the learners from our environment and try to step back and make changes that affect climate change, you know, instead of profits. So yeah, that's good, kind of, and just shortly, our salmon were sent to New Zealand from McLeod River. We're in the process of trying to get them back. The Maori people are totally supportive of this, and it's our own government that has this hesitation of like, are those salmon from California? So we have to do DNA testing on our salmon for them to come back. So we're in the process of doing that, but we know that whatever happens to salmon happens to people. So I want to end on that. So
yeah, that is great too. And I want you to catch your breath because we'll come back to you in just a second. But we're seeing the connection now. When we started with candy and we started with water is life. We are water. We are salmon. We are beavers. Beavers are us. I mean, it really is all one thing. And you've said a couple times, people can't be the judge of this, and yet that doesn't stop us, especially here in America. But one of the things that the film does is it gives us a nice comprehensive background of how we as people have, in some cases, a lot of cases, poorly made these decisions and rerouted this water all over the state. Brittany, talk about that as a central theme for the film. And then I want the chief then to talk about her latest battle with yet another dam, yet another decision that is on the horizon. But talk about how that became the narrative of the film in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't, California wouldn't look how it does without the infrastructure that is already here. So we do have to recognize that. But going forward, I feel like we can and must do better. Pouring another giant wall of concrete is not going to make it rain. And when we realize that, you know, everything is connected, when we lean into the teachings of Chief Colleen Sisk and Candy White and other Indigenous leaders, really, that's where we get to learn what we need to learn to heal ourselves and to heal our water cycle and to get water back into the aquifers, to build living soil. I mean, the beaver and the salmon are helping each other. That's an incredible relationship, and the trees are part of that, and the whole forest is part of that. And you can't talk about the water on land without talking about the water under the land. It is all connected. And so what I really hoped to do with this film was to try my best to show, you know, that this has to be a systems approach. We have to think about all of this at once. We have to try to hold all of this in our hands and in our hearts and in our minds all at once. And it's a lot. Gosh, it's why I had to chop my film apart and put it back together so many times, because it's too much. I had to reel it in. Yeah, we've done some damage. We collectively have done some damage, and we need to learn new ways of doing things, and perhaps those new ways are actually the old ways, and we need to be humble enough to listen. And that's why I am so honored to have been trusted by you ladies, to be honest, to include your stories and your ways of being and doing in this film. It is so important to me. So thank you for being willing to share, and for being leaders in this movement, and for speaking up for the water in the way that you do. Our climate has changed. It is changing. It will continue to change. The extremes will get more extreme. We have to, you know, we have to think about and realize that this is all connected. So I don't know if I answered your question just then, Pepper.
No, you set it up. You've set it up. It's fine. And I also
the dams. The dams.
We're going to talk about the dams now.
Yeah, they're
okay.
Yeah.
It's a good setup. I got you. And Jason, I want to let you know that we're still going to get to you. We don't want to leave you out here. But when we get to talk to Jason, we get to talk about solutions and hope. And so
food and wine.
Food, and I'm teasing that as like the reason to stick along, because we are going to uplift this story here at the end of this. But Chief, you're in a battle now against another dam, and I think most of us go about our daily lives and maybe we think, oh, they're going to put a dam in here. I guess engineers thought that was a good idea. They're smarter than me, so I'm okay. I guess we need another dam. Talk about that battle, because it's very serious for you, your way of life, the places you live, and where your people live.
Yeah, we're much like the salmon. When they put the dam in, it blocked all of the salmon from going to the river. And when they put that dam in, they took all of our homes off of the river, and we've never been allowed to live there again. And so we're in that same struggle that salmon are in. And when you think about dams nowadays, it's really an archaic way that was set up for a few people to really reap the wealth of it by setting up communities that could not exist without that system. So they're totally reliant on these pipelines. So they're not going to let them go, because there'll be ghost towns. There'll be water ghost towns. We already have mining ghost towns, and we have lumber mill ghost towns. We have all kinds of ghost towns where something popped up, they exploited it, and it's gone. Now we're at water. We're at water now. But most of the people don't understand that, like for Shasta Dam, it's already a dam. They want to build it higher. They want to build it 20 feet higher, 18.5 feet, but it'll be 20 feet higher. And what that does to the lake line, taking out more trees for 371 miles around this lake, they'll lose another 300 feet of trees that'll be next lake line level, the high water mark. But in addition to that, no one is thinking that, in the 1880s, when they were developing these towns up here, they brought mining, and they were up here looking for gold. And they didn't find gold, but they did find copper, and they found iron, and they found nickel, and they had all these mines. And those mines are under that river, under that lake. And they didn't bother to try to cap them. They just flooded over them. So those mines continue to seep into the sediments that are in the lake. And nobody wants to talk about, the mercury poisoned fish already in the lake. This isn't coming, it's already here. They don't tell the recreation marinas and boaters, because they're going to fly in, they're going to do their thing on the lake, they're going to catch a few fish, and they're going to eat those fish, but nobody's telling them that those fish are probably mercury contaminated, because they're not going to eat enough to make them sick, because they're not reliant on it for a sustainable diet. But nobody's talking about that, right? And we are not going to gain anything as a tribe in fighting these fights to bring back the salmon. They're not going to make us co-managers of salmon, because we're not considered a recognized tribe. We're not considered that, even though we're all the only tribe on that river, and we are the ones with the knowledge about salmon and about the area, how it works together. But overall, it's all of the people down river and in the future generations to come. If that lake already has 60 foot of toxic sludge in the bottom, and the government doesn't want to do anything about that, they just want to build it 20 feet higher. So nothing is stopping this toxic sludge from continuing to collect. And so it'll be future generations that will have to come up with some kind of effort to neutralize all that toxic sludge, because dams are not forever, and it will come out at some point in time, and all of that sludge will go down river and it will kill everything in the river, probably all the way to the ocean, because that's how they do it now, right? This is a Keystone River system that brings water, and then they ship that water even further then the ocean at the delta clear down to San Diego. This is setting up the biggest disaster California has ever experienced. Instead of attacking the problem, resolving those issues, they're setting up this whole system. And people like even Redding, you know, it's like Redding is maybe what, 6 miles from the dam, and they have no position about the dam. It's like, oh, I guess it's a good idea. People need water, you know, and 80% of that water goes to big ag farming. 80% of the water that's shipped goes to big ag farming. Big ag farming only represents 2% of California's economy. Why is that? Why do we worry about big ag farming that's doing GMO farming? Why do we worry about them getting enough water when they're only 2% of the economy system for California? And it's like the North State doesn't get any per capita from that. There's no money that comes back so that the North State could actually take care of the high mountains. We could have jobs of people doing the work that beavers used to do, because the beavers are gone, you know, and the wolves are gone, and all the water keepers are gone. So that means people should be picking up the load, but there's no money for that. There's no job creations for that. We're not up there. I mean, people don't even recognize the sources have to be taken care of for the rivers to exist. And there's no knowledge of that. But the other dam that is being thought of and pushed for is the site's Reservoir, and it will be along I-5 by Williams, where there's no water to fill that dam. They're going to take the Sacramento River water, which is salmon water, to fill this dry location for storage. And that will deplete both Shasta and the Trinity Dam, which should be flowing to the ocean, but is shipped over the hill to go into the Sacramento drainage. You know, and so there has to be better thinkers. You know, it's like, why are we building on this archaic way of water transport? And it's not working, so they're going to build it higher. They're going to put twin tunnels in the delta, digging these freeway-sized tunnels 150 feet deep in the delta, which means all of the underground springs that's in the delta where the fish spawn now in the delta will not be there. They're going to disrupt that whole groundwater system. All of the groundwater in Stockton and all of those areas are going to change because they're going to do this. But there's no science to prove that. So, you know, they don't have to listen to traditional knowledge of our systems. And they're just going to do it with, I don't know what kind of science they use, but the real science will come out like 30 years from now and say, oh, gee, this is what really happened. And there's no thought that this estuary on California coast, I mean, we're a salmon state. We're not a GMO farming state. We are a salmon state, and we should return to be a salmon state. But that delta is an estuary, right? And people don't seem to know what an estuary is. It's not a bay. It is a functioning, live, sensitive water system that acclimates saltwater, freshwater for many, many species, including the salmon and the delta smelt and all of the things that make that work. And if you dig down into that estuary and you take away the water systems that come up, because, you know, they stopped the San Joaquin River, and only 20% of the Sacramento River reaches the delta now because of all of the draw off. So if they take out the fresh water coming under the delta, essentially they will kill the delta. It'll become a bay. What does that do to 700 miles of Pacific coast? It's like people don't associate, everything has an opposite and equal reaction. And it's not something that you can fix, like, oh, we better put all that dirt back in there and take that tunnel out. It's like, oh, it's crazy. People are going down the wrong way about this. And the public has to wake up. And I think films like this, I hope that the public wakes up, not just that water's not running out of my tap, but that water is that part of life that nothing can live. I mean, we live without gold, right? You know, the tribes here never used the gold. It was a useless rock. It wasn't flint. It wasn't one that you could make a mortar out of. And then you have all these people flooding your homeland, picking up this useless rock and killing you for it. It's like the changes in the economy or what's important happened right then. And we've been building on that, and nobody wants to back up and change it. Yeah.
Well, there are people who are making better decisions and doing the right things, and that's when we're going to bring in Jason now. But first, I want to know, somebody's got to claim that rooster. Whose rooster is that?
That's my rooster. He's supposed to be going to bed. He's
There's so much to say right now. I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
but I also wanted to just mention that Senator Deb Haaland is now the Department of Interior Director.
Yeah.
So hopefully, you know, we have a changed thinker or a native thinker, even though I know that, you know, the rush of oil companies and all of that is going to be fighting her all the way. You know, there is a breath of fresh air in that she got in there.
Yeah.
And there's a number of other Native leaders that are on key positions, including Wahea Johns and some of the other ones who come from the people. You know, they're real. They grew up in their homelands and they know those things. And so maybe that's going to be a change that we all need, that, you know, America needs. So I just wanted to say that I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a change we all need.
Big
And
news.
I hope, I mean, can I just say something real quick, Pepper? I hope that folks are realizing, you know, listening to Chief Sisk about why it is so important to have Native people in leadership positions, because, you know, most folks who look like me don't think this way. We didn't grow up with this kind of knowledge. And if we're willing to learn and listen, everything benefits, all life will benefit. And so that is really important. That's one way we can all get involved, is supporting Native people in running for public office, in going for leadership positions, do everything we can to center those voices. It's so important. And I think we're transitioning to agriculture right now. Is that what my spidey senses are telling me?
What we're doing.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
We got to bring Jason in. Jason Haas is.
He's been so patient.
So patient. Cobbles Creek. For those of you not local here on the Central Coast, Jason is the partner and general manager of one of our finest wineries on the Central Coast, Tablas Creek Vineyards. In fact, I'm celebrating tonight.
Hey.
This panel. Little free plug for you there, Jason. But it's proof that we can make better decisions and we can do things on a level and have quality products, have quality stuff. A lot of times people think, I'm speaking kind of as a layperson here. There's different levels of this. You hear about organic, you hear about sustainable. When you start hearing, and I followed Jason and I followed the wine industry here, you guys are getting into territories of levels of things now that are next level to that, even biodynamic, regenerative. Let's talk about that. Talk about your journey in agriculture and how you think about all these things that we've been talking about.
Ooh, sure. Thanks, Pepper. And thank you, Brittany, for inviting me to be a part of this and inviting us at Tablas Creek to be a part of the kind of that closing turn of the film, where you look at all of these things that are really scary. I mean, that are ways that we as a society and a community have kind of let down the natural environment and the communities that we're a part of. And yet I feel like there is maybe more reason for hope now than there has been in a while. I think that the whole idea of regenerative farming, where you're using agriculture to be a part of the solution to challenges like the availability of scarce resources like water or energy, and as a way of fighting against climate change. I mean, that idea is such a new idea. I mean, it's an old idea, but the idea that this is something that can be built in a way that is compatible with high quality agriculture, that's something which I think was a pretty radical idea even a decade ago. And the fact that now there are billions of dollars in the most recent COVID relief bill to help transition farms to regenerative agriculture. I mean, that's such a sea change. So, um, Pepper, you were asking about kind of those different tiers of organic and biodynamic and regenerative. I mean, I think people probably understand organic intuitively. It's basically, you don't use chemical herbicides or fertilizers or pesticides, you can be organic. But that doesn't mean that the agriculture that you're doing is a self-sustaining, complete model. You're just bringing in non-chemical fertilizers. You're using less toxic pesticides. So the idea of biodynamic, and this is translated into regenerative farming, is that you are essentially developing an ecosystem within your farm unit that helps provide the natural controls that you need. So you're building biodiversity, you're building healthier soils, you're building soils that have higher organic content, higher carbon content. They're pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, which also helps them hold more moisture. You have to use less water, and this is really where kind of the fundamental appeal is for us. You do all this, and it helps you make better wine. It helps you grow better grapes. It helps your grapevines live longer, and then you end up with a product that benefits from your work. But it's still relatively new, and it has to be expanded to scale in order for this to really have an impact. And that's the big challenge for all of us in agriculture over the coming decades, is to make that turn, to make the turn from a more exploitative use of the land, where you're using the minerals and nutrients that are there and trying to replace them as much as you can, to doing something which is actually becomes a self-sustaining process.
Self-sustaining and regenerative. The word regenerative to me is really important. Talk about how what you're doing helps some of the other panelists that we're talking about here. This kind of thing would help us not have this thought process about dams, right? It would change how we think about how we use the land.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing to remember is that the best reservoir you're going to have for water is always going to be your soil. And one of the best ways that you can make soil that holds more moisture so the water doesn't run off is to increase the carbon content of that soil, the organic content of that soil. And that happens in natural processes over the course of centuries and millennia, as things decay and fires sweep over it and it burns, it becomes charcoal, and plants die and decompose. But you can fast forward that process by being conscious about the way that you're farming. So for example, we have a flock of 200 sheep that we use to graze the vineyard. They can't be out there in the summer when the grapevines are producing fruit, because they'll happily eat the fruit. But there's 8 months of the year. Yeah, you don't want that. But there's like seven and a half months of the year where you can have them out in the vineyard. And what happens is they turn all of this cover crop that grows every winter, they turn that into manure that goes back into the soil. They bring those nutrients from the bottoms of the hills, where they tend to settle with erosion, back up to the tops, because sheep tend to climb, and so they leave their manure spread around. You rotate them in a conscious way so that you're not overgrazing any individual part of the land, and instead they're clipping back the newly grown growth, and then you move them out every 24 or 48 hours. But the reason why all of this works is that it is essentially recreating a process that is a natural process. It's the same process that in the Great Plains you had herds of buffalo that moved continually. They were moved by predators. They wouldn't stay in an area and overgraze in an area for a long time. They would instead move on a regular basis and then return and move and return. And that built some of the richest and most productive soils in the world over the course of the millennia that this happened. And that goes away when you have a monoculture, when you have a farm that is farming one thing, and that is the only species that's in that farm. But it turns out that you can make your farm more productive by incorporating more diversity. And there are lots of people who are working on that, and I'm honored that we've had the chance to pioneer some of it.
And it's a theme that has picked up in all of these panelists and throughout the film. We've talked about like the beavers maintaining and doing a better job with the land than we do. The same with the salmon. The salmon do a better job than we do. So we're recreating these scenarios where nature does a better job than we do. Brittany, talk about that, because soil is a big part of the film as we get towards the end, where you start to see, this like the way we're going to get out of this.
Yeah, and another I saw something come up in the chat. I'll try my best to connect all of this. Rob is saying some of us have been advocating these ideas for over 3 decades. What has taken so long for things to change? And I think what I've noticed as I've worked on this film is that, finally, like regenerative agriculture, biodynamics, holistic land management, all of these are kind of becoming buzzwords, and they're new to me. And they're new to a lot of us, but I highly doubt that they are new to Chief Sisk and Candy White, who probably for generations have been farming this way, and they didn't need words for it. So I just want to always bring it back to, recognizing how much we can learn, and that a lot of these ideas that feel really new to us because they're just now finally bubbling up to the, to the common vernacular aren't necessarily brand new, spiffy ideas. Maybe we're finally tuning into something that has been here. Maybe we are finally able to hear a little bit what the earth is trying to say, and what the people who have always spoken for and with the earth are trying to say, and finally we're willing a little bit to listen. I hope that that's the case, and I am so thrilled to always brag on Toblis Creek, because if you want an example of a farm, a winery, a vineyard, a business that is just checking all the boxes and dare I say, kicking ass in all the ways, Toblis Creek is really doing it. And they are one of only 10 farms in the world to have this brand new regenerative organic certification, and it's a really big deal, and I think we should celebrate that. And as consumers, we can celebrate that every time we want to go buy a bottle of wine, every time we want to go buy food. We can ask questions and support the producers who are healing the water cycle, filling the aquifers, growing soil, and also producing food and drink. And the soil is such an important piece, because if the soil is alive, it acts like a sponge and it holds on to all of the water that lands on it. And if the soil is not alive, it is dirt, and the water will run right off, and we get erosion, and we get, sediment in our water bodies. My dog is barking incessantly. That's always really helpful. But yeah, I mean, the soil is so important. And because so much of our planet is grassland, there's a huge potential for grazing animals in ways that mimic the behavior of ancient grazing herds. And, we can't rewind and tear down every single fence, but we can do the best we can with what we have now, to grow food and also grow soil. And by growing soil, then we are helping our water. We are helping our water cycle. So someone had asked in the chat earlier, what's a really easy way that we can all get involved? And since we all eat 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. We're all different, no judgment. Every time you eat, you get to choose, what is the water story connected to this glass of wine, or this burger, or this broccoli, whatever it is that you're eating. What is the water story that is attached to that? How much water did it take to produce it? Was water polluted in the process? Are you supporting producers who are from minority groups? Are you supporting farmers who could use extra support to know that all the effort they are making is worth it, right? If we demand it, then it will change. And I think Tablas Creek is just such a great example. I learned so much from you guys, Jason. Thank you. And thanks for just being such a pillar in our community. I mean, and you guys are so great with sharing what you're learning, and also sharing that you're learning. And I think that's really important too, that we come at all of this with a humble beginner's mind, and be willing to ask questions, be willing to make mistakes, be willing to listen. And again, always try to center the voices of the people who have been here the longest and who know this land and these systems better than we do. So, and when I say we, I'm really generalizing, but I hope you all know what I am trying to say there. And I'll toss it back to you, Pepper, because I don't know where my brain wants to go next.
That's okay. That's okay. I do have another question for Jason, and then I want to just plant the seed for all the panelists that we'll get a final thought here in just a little bit. But I also want to add to Brittany, we talked about this on the call the other day. It's, and this is a pet peeve of mine, ironically, even though I'm in marketing and I do radio. But once marketing people get a hold of these words and try to make them into something fancy, I think people need to do more homework with what these words actually mean. And like you said, follow the story of the water for the products that you use. Because it might look good on a package that something's organic, but it also might not mean anything. It might not mean anything substantial, right?
Or it's natural. It's natural. Yes. Yes.
There are a bunch of words that sound really good, and they slap them on products, and people feel better about themselves for buying them, but they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Homework's a good thing to do. You may already have this plan too, but I want to make sure we hit on, and I would love to toss this one to Candy. Just how, like, water is life, water is everything. We have resources, but of them all, water is absolutely the most important. And we find ourselves in this moment where we just, many of us just heard about, the commodification of water. That is terrifying. And I would love, if maybe we finish it with this, maybe we hop there right now, but just to make sure we touch on how important water is as a resource, that it really is, the keystone species of the resources, maybe we say, and what it might look like for our future generations, with a business as usual plan, or if there's hope, that we could really make a difference. I don't know. Can we toss that to Candy right now, or am I messing up your flow?
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine, because that was going to be part of my final question for her. And also, I know she was very involved in Standing Rock, and she mentioned that earlier. So anything there that, we could use an update on, or anything you want to share with us about that. And then, about the future, your children, your children's children, and water.
Thank you so much. This has been a good panel, and thank you to everybody for hanging in there. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about why I fight for clean water, and it's because I'm from an area where this is what I see every day now. This is a hydraulic fracturing oil rig, and I want to share it with you here because I know the film doesn't go really deep into the fossil fuel industry or to climate change, but it is mentioned, and it is one of the things that is causing the problems. We're talking about farming. Well, North Dakota used to be the breadbasket of the country, and now a lot of this farming areas are being zoned out for the industry and then contaminated with the spills. And I don't know if you all know, but with fracking, that uses millions to do this process. And so I just, I wanted to link my work with water, with the climate crisis, with Standing Rock, because what I'm showing you here is the Bakken formation where the oil going through the DAPL pipeline is coming from. And that oil is contaminated Lake Sakakawea every day, which is the Missouri River. My reservoir was created by a dam in the 1950s by the federal government. And that fracked water, that produced water, is dumped on the roadways every day. It gets into the water system through spills. Dead plant life comes whenever this so-called produced water touches anything. And so it's just contamination, radioactive materials. And guess what? Everybody's downstream. It doesn't stay here. It goes into the atmosphere. It goes into the air. This is a picture of a water taken right out of the lake, right where our water intake plant is for our drinking water. They said, don't worry, this is a blue-green algae bloom, but you should worry because we have a bunch of fish die-offs ever since then. And I started out with saying water is the first life. And now imagine this picture, but with nothing but black oil contamination. Would you want your child to grow in that? Could they even? No, they can't. And I can't say enough about the problems with humanity, just water in general. If we don't have clean water, this is what can happen to us before we're even born. In fossil fuel industry is impacting us negatively in this way. And ultimately it comes down to the way that they are using the water. And basically they are using the water to create these camps, to create these problems. You asked about Standing Rock, where we were defending the sacred, all because we didn't want our water contaminated. And now we've had at least 3 spills in that pipeline. We were violently removed, but we're working on small scale renewable energies too. In addition to what was said in the film around bringing our Indigenous population and our Indigenous women together to understand that we can make a transition away. And so I wanted to let you all know that on our website at ienearth.org, you can find this booklet that talks about the Indigenous principles of just transition. And it does have to do with also farming, agriculture, water, and how we protect our resources for our future generations. Like my daughter, Ayana here, standing in one of our earth lodges, and talk about the problems with fracking, because this is how we see it in the United States. Look at the watershed, look at where the water is, and look at where fracking is happening. At all those millions and millions of gallons of water per frack job are contaminating our watersheds. And we cannot live without water, literally. So worldwide, it is also a problem. Worldwide, this is where you see the hotspots for fracking contamination. And it's a huge hot ticket, which is why I'm so happy Deb Haaland has now been nominated for hydraulic fracturing, and we're doing it for the kids. We're doing it for the next 7 generations. As Indigenous peoples, we say it's important to look 7 generations back and 7 generations ahead. So you get that big picture understanding of the life cycles and the life systems of the balance of our earth. And right now we're totally out of whack and totally out of balance. And I fear for my 2 little lovies here, my little Ayana and my little winter eagle, because what is it going to look like in 50 years, considering the tipping points that we've already reached now? What are grapes going to look like in 50 years if we can't put clean water on them? You can't be organic if you have contaminated air and contaminated stuff coming out of this water from fossil fuel extraction. You can be certified organic, but if you're next to a coal-fired power plant with the mercury contamination and stuff, you're going to be SOL. I can't cuss on here. So
Yes.
I would be remiss not to talk about a bit about, when I say defend the sacred, it has to do with water, and it has to do with how we're contaminating and polluting that water, and how we don't have to be that wasteful. We're so wasteful in the United States.
Candy, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Kate, you're next. I shouldn't start a new topic, but there was one little part of what Brittany and I talked about regarding the beaver and the Keystone species that I did want to put a plug in. And I don't know if the fire guys are still here, but that fire film that happened out at the Vandenberg is amazing. I didn't grow up around here, so I'd never heard of this before, and that film was great. But we talk a lot about water. We also have to talk about fire, and talk about real quick as we wrap up with you, how the Beaver plays a role in our fire management, or can help us with our fire management, California.
Absolutely. And thank you, Candy, and yes, all that imagery and your words are so important. Thank you. So thankfully, we've finally got some amazing researchers now who are really looking at the relationship between beaver and wildfire on the landscape. Our own Emily Fairfax, who's at Cal State Channel Islands, and she consults a lot for the SLO Beaver Brigade. She did a study looking at basically beavers that get out on the landscape and create wetlands, and water doesn't burn unless it's got petrochemicals and has been in hydraulic fracking. So if you're in a place where you don't have those chemicals in your water, then what happens is those wetlands are really resilient. And there's amazing photos that have been taken that show these catastrophic canopy fires that go through these forests, and the places where the beaver are don't burn, and they become refuge not only for the beaver themselves, but for everyone else. And so it becomes this oasis where a lot of others can survive these wildfires. So making sure that we support our beavers on the landscape so we can create these wetted areas and provide more refugia for all of us is super, super, super critical. We need, California's gotten rid of most of our wetlands. We're down to 5% of what we used to have. And so we want to hang on to them and support those that maintain those wetlands so that we won't be so flammable, because we're as you know, the state is burning a lot more frequently and a lot higher intensity. And I do want to put a plug out there. We have a California Beaver Summit that's going to be happening April 7th and 9th.
Yeah.
And it's just 2 short afternoon sessions, and it's free. And I really recommend, if you got inspired by anything that was said with regards to beaver and restoration and what we could be doing in California, definitely log in, sign up. It could sell out, so check that out. And yeah, so
I just put the link in there for you into the chat box. So if anybody wants to grab the info for the Beaver Summit or any of the other folks that are on here, I'm getting all link crazy in there. Sorry,
great.
Kate, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Brittany. Yeah, and I mean, California, we have beaver, and I always encourage people, just figure out where the beaver are nearest to you. If you don't know, you can look on inaturalist.org. That's one of our best maps that has the locations of beaver, and become a beaver keeper, a beaver steward. Make sure that people are figuring out ways to coexist with them. We have so many solutions. We can protect trees, we can protect culverts, we can prevent flooding. There's all these great solutions out there. So really just support your neighbors and support your agencies in not killing them, because that's kind of, thankfully beaver have been protected now. We don't recreationally trap them anymore. But we're still killing a lot of them because people just haven't figured out how to do these solutions. So there you have it.
Thank you very much, Kate. We're going to give Chief the last word off the panel. So that means, Jason, you're next. My question a while ago was going to be, and Brittany kind of touched on it, the reaction to other farmers, winemakers, vineyards in our area to the work you're doing. I know it's been overwhelmingly positive, and I know you're an industry leader for that. What do you tell other wineries and other farmers, and how do you do outreach for this type of farming that you do?
So a lot of it, I mean, we're fortunate that people are coming to us and asking how we've done it. And I've always felt like we're fortunate to be in a community where wine is not a zero-sum sort of a game. It's not like if somebody buys a bottle of our neighbor's wine, they're less likely to buy a bottle of our wine. They're more likely to. So the more that we can get involved in our community and share the things that we're doing, the better off everybody is. Because I mean, we're 270 acres. that's a tiny piece of just the Paso Robles wine area, and it's an even smaller piece of California and of the country. And that's one of the things that I think is really exciting about the regenerative organic certification, is that this is organized by the Regenerative Organic Alliance. And wine is just one piece of this bigger push. They have separate protocols for row crops and livestock and chocolate and orchards, and really all of them following these basic principles of building a regenerative system, but that's tweaked to be specific to that particular crop. So that's the pilot program that we were a part of. People who want to learn more about it can just go to regenorganic.org. But it's been encouraging to see the number of people. I guess they've already had. We just got the announcement of our certification in August, and they've already got about 20 other wineries who've applied for this next year. And I think it's going to grow. It's going to grow exponentially as people realize that this is a way of improving the wine that you're making and improving the land that you have and being a better part of the community that you're a part of. And that kind of win-win-win is what we have to be, that's kind of solutions that we have to be looking for.
Thank you. Chief Sisk, we'll give you a final thought here. What can people do to get involved? And you've done a great job of giving us different ways to think about these issues. Tell us some parting thoughts as we let you go for the evening.
Yeah, I'd like to share, the science that's coming out now about, quote, trees are family systems. As if, we didn't know that, because, trees all share water, and they decide that little trees need water too, even though their roots are not very deep. They get enough water to grow big. And so we should learn from that. But, science is just now figuring this out. They're just now figuring out that birds bring happiness. When we say we're in a flyway, we are in a way of happiness, of the different birds that are coming through right now. The scrub jays are coming through. The chickadees have just left, all the ducks that are coming through. And every time you watch some of those, they're different colors and they're beautiful, and it brings that peace of joy to you. And I don't think people get to see that enough. City birds are not the same as a flyway. And so we have to realize that fire, even though we have these wildfires, that they are not a fire problem. It's a people setting fires problem. And it's a misunderstanding of forests and the way that they work, how our Forest Service doesn't take care of it. What I call it's the man age of doing things, right? They're managers of the forest and of the water, of the deer. It's like, oh, there's too many deer, we're going to shoot them all and we'll bring in goats. It's a system of recognizing, and maybe I have high hopes with Deb Holland about supporting Indigenous knowledge and having people understand the support for Indigenous knowledge about, turning these things around. And making smarter choices rather than political or profitable choices. Make the smart choice. The toxic water, we don't even know how much water they're contaminating every day. We say, oh, we have a shortage of water, we have a drought, we have this. It's like, how much drinking water do we choose to contaminate every day? That should be common knowledge. Can we afford one more fracking mine? Can we afford one more dumping of the chemicals in our water system? We don't know that, right? We don't know a common denominator of fresh water to drinking water, and how much, like every water bottling plant that goes in, half of that water is contaminated. Why would we do that? We could drink that half of water if the watering bottle company wasn't there. And we don't require any filtering. you know, our agricultural farms, we got to make some better choices about their responsibility to the water for everybody, not just growing their ag farms or orchards or whatever it is. So we have to get people in there who are willing to tackle the big problem, you know, and not say it's so complicated because they have water rights. And these water rights are since 1914, and we just can't get by with it, you know. But for the Winnemem Wintu, you know, we had a prayer to help others understand the water system in California. And we are in the middle of this prayer. It's called Run for Salmon. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is on Facebook. You can follow Run for Salmon. We have all people of all walks of life, all ages, and we're trying to educate them about this water, this great water system, and what it looks like at the top to what it looks like by the time it gets to the delta, and teaching others about that so that maybe when they grow up, things can change. You know, they'll have firsthand experience about that. It's like kind of like salmon to whales now, in understanding our responsibility for the salmons to whales. And the water is not a commodity. You know, it's in Wall Street now, but boy, that is the biggest mistake ever, is to make it a commodity like that. And so the indigenous people around the world, you know, Run for Salmon is now in 8 different languages at the UN. It is a winner of a youth award and has been transcribed into 8 different languages, which is a, you know, worldwide water. The Winnemem Wintu can't sit here and say, you know, we go when we sing to our water. We go to the spring and we sing. And now it's not enough. We have to know what's happening on every mountain around the world, because we believe 20 sacred mountains keep our world together. And 20 sacred mountains are the water banks for the world. And whatever happens to Mount Shasta happens to other mountains. And Mount Shasta Spring has gone dry 3 times. This is a major warning for us. Like my grams used to say, when they were talking about global warming, she goes, this is a global warning. You have a chance to change if you heed the warning. But if you just call it a warming cycle, like you're not doing anything, you know, it's just the earth is doing something, then you have no responsibility. But we have to take that responsibility. You know, every water user has to take that responsibility to make things better. And that's what I would part with now, so that all of our generations from here on out, you know, it's not just about us. Like my grams would say, we're the short timers. These trees are like 500 years old. And, you know, we have generations that are coming that will be gone by then, but we should love them, you know. So thank you for being on the panel and being a part of this film. And I think it's going to make a difference for everybody who can watch this and be a part of it and share it. So, oh.
Thank you so much, Chief. Brittany, before your final thought, and thanks again to all the panelists here. Bouncing around on my screen, I see Gar Russell, your editor and cohort.
Yes.
He keeps going from here to here to here to here to here.
Yes, Gar.
So I know Gar is there. Shout out to Gar for his.
Oh, thank you, Gar.
On here, that's he's the man.
Oh,
Brittany,
he is.
Brittany, bring us home. Final thoughts, and again, congratulations on this accomplishment. First film, not bad for your first one, girl.
Hey, thanks, Pep.
Not bad.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Of course, I need to drink water. I'm gonna like choke on my own self here. Yeah, this panel could not have been better. You all are such rock stars. Thank you for being a part of the film. Thank you for trusting me. That's huge to me. And thank you for the work that you do in this world. It is so important. It has been an honor to to be able to share it. And I hope that this story and this film can travel far and wide. And I hope that folks learn a lot of new things. You know, like I said, I have just hoped to be a voice for the water in my own small way, and have learned so much of how to do that from everyone that's been in this film. So, gosh,
What's next?
yeah.
What's next for you?
Next,
What's the next water park?
sharing this thing with everybody. That's got to be what's next. As far as what project is next, I don't know yet. I'm going to happily remain in a very curious, liminal, open space about it and see what shows up and smacks me in the head. But water is why I'm here. Water is why I am here on this planet. And yeah, I hope that this film can really make a difference for people and can really make a difference for our water. And I'm so grateful. I hope you all know how totally grateful I am. I think it's also important to say this film was funded entirely by individual donations from folks. This was originally a Kickstarter funded project. 474 people supported the Kickstarter way back 5 years ago. And then when I would run out of money, we'd do a fundraiser party and we'd raise more, and then I'd run out and then we'd raise more. And it would not be possible without literally hundreds and hundreds of people supporting the work, believing in the story, again, trusting me. So thank you. I don't take any of that lightly, that the trust is a really big deal. So I hope that I have done you well, and I hope that I have served the water. And let's just all do our best going forward, and let's all work together and remember that everything is connected.
Well said. Say cheers to everybody. Thank you for having me. We'll send things over to Sky McLennan and our festival crew and the SLO Film Fest. Thank you guys so much. It's a fantastic film fest, and congrats on everybody's accomplishments.
Thank you, Pepper, and thank you, Brittany, and to all the amazing voices and folks on this panel. I know, Brittany, you and I talked about this, you know, after we saw your film, and I'm just so glad so many of you showed up, and just what a meaningful and important conversation. And just make sure, if you haven't seen Brittany's film, you can see it till midnight Wednesday online virtually. Make sure you see it. We are recording this conversation as well, and we'll try to get it up online for folks to see as well. So thank you so much again, and happy closing night, and congratulations, Brittany.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations, everybody. Yay. Much love.